Hello, and welcome to another segment of Ask the Therapist. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Sarah Ruebelt, who is a therapist in St. Louis, Missouri. Hello, Dr. Ruebelt.
Okay.
And would you inform our audience, just give a little bit more information about your practice, your background, anything you'd like to discuss to get our audience to know you a little better?
Sure.
Okay.
I am a family therapist. I identify as a family therapist, and the reason is that I graduated from St. Louis University with my master's degree in family therapy in 2002, and also received my PhD in 2009 in the same field and the same university. I loved it so much. In family therapy. In between, however, I did do a long internship / later on actually working for the International Institute of St. Louis, working with refugees and immigrants who are being resettled in St. Louis area. And that's where my passion is, really working with multicultural. So I would identify mostly as a multicultural, cross-cultural family therapist.
Okay. Awesome. And so your practice now is located in Clayton?
Clayton, yes.
Okay. And how is it with how long have you been in St. Louis again? I'm sorry.
Well, it's a long story.
Okay.
I'm originally from St. Louis,
Mm-hmm.
but during my PhD, I actually moved to Davis, California.
Okay.
And I became a visiting scholar at UC Davis, conducting my dissertation research on cross-cultural couples adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, and that was basically where I ended up staying and teaching, and later having a private practice both in Davis and Sacramento, California. And that's where I've been in the last 10 years up until last June. So I've been here now for 8 months, returning back to St. Louis area.
Okay. And so how is the difference with the I guess that would be cross-cultural also,
Absolutely.
transplant from the West Coast to Midwest, and even though you've been a resident of St. Louis before, but just coming back as a professional, what differences do you see? Are there any differences, and how do you feel about that?
Absolutely. I'm going to be very authentic and honest about that.
We appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I love the Midwest in terms of just the hospitality and people, the kindness. There's that sort of like Midwestern charm that I always remember in people, and I appreciate that very much. But I have to say, life in California had really opened me up to a whole another openness in terms of just being authentic and honest, and really just, you know, letting things be expressed and not shying away from conversations, and so I guess the main difference I notice is the level of conservativeness here compared to California, at least Davis, Northern California, where I come from.
And so with that, because I agree with that, with the conservativeness, how does that then, or does that affect your practice in any way, do you think?
Tremendously. I think since I've opened my practice, and you know, just by being on Psychotherapy St. Louis, as well as Psychology Today. And
those are websites, by the way, the
yes.
network websites for, yes, absolutely.
Yes, I'm on the therapy directory on Psychology Today and the Psychotherapy St. Louis. And but I think just by reading my bio, you will see that I'm very much in touch with the multicultural, cross-cultural community. And I invite diversity and the openness to talk about differences. And so, you know, in my practice, I'm inviting those who want to be understood and validated, and, you know, the minority groups and just immigrants and all people who believe in that, in that acceptance. And yes, you know, because we don't all fit into a box.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things in the field of psychotherapy I think is important to emphasize, is that you know, the Western model doesn't always fit everybody from different parts of the world.
That is so important to understand, especially with the population that you work with in general. Yes. And by the way, how are you then incorporating that reach of that population to build your practice? How are you networking to get that population aware, to reach them, to make them aware that you're available? Because it sounds like what you do is really needed. I'm just wondering, how are you going about reaching that population?
You know, I'm definitely connecting with other therapists whose multicultural I guess, niche or emphasis in their practice is a priority. They make that a priority. I've been trying to connect with some individuals who see things. I think there's a Society of Cross-Cultural Research. There is a multicultural. There's some things in St. Louis that I'm looking into.
Okay.
Also, I'm planning on connecting again with the International Institute. I believe in
Yes,
their
you
work,
mentioned
and I'm
that,
very
and I
proud to
definitely
have
was
worked
going
there.
there next.
Absolutely,
Yes.
I think it's wonderful what they do for refugees and immigrants, and I'm always going to be there to support them. Now that I'm back in St. Louis.
Sure.
But yes, I think that. Just networking. I mean, I'm here. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to other professionals as well. I'm doing a lot of networking right now so far. Also meeting with professors because I've also taught in graduate school, particularly on multiculturalism and cross-cultural understanding. So just hoping to spread the word that way.
Okay, so what would be some of the cultures that you most frequently interact with, or you that are your client base?
Of course. Being Middle Eastern myself, I'm Iranian American. I identify as Iranian American, and I think that understanding Middle Eastern people is really important, particularly in our society where there's so much misunderstandings and stigmas.
Absolutely.
And so, I as a family therapist, I also do individual couples therapy, and so a lot of couples who come from different parts of the world come to me. It's not so much specific to Middle Easterners, it's just, it's again that cross-cultural adjustment when individuals want to build that bridge of understanding, whether it's through, within a bicultural household, in an intermarriage, or just having a hard time adjusting into their, country, coming from their country of origin, that adjustment process, the acculturation.
Assimilation to the culture.
Yes, and it's really important to emphasize the acculturation being the key, because assimilation, as you know, is when they feel the sense of loss, giving up their heritage and their identity, whereas acculturation is when you empower the individual to hold what's meaningful to them and to adjust to.
And how difficult would that be with certain cultures,
Absolutely.
obviously, that you mentioned?
Yes, I mean, in a short period that I've been here, I've gotten pretty involved in my son's school and already did a little kindergarten advocacy on the Persian New Year, Nowruz, and just the openness about what that is about, and just building those bridges and gaps, because not everybody knows about every culture that's out there.
Exactly.
And it's up to us to build those bridges of understanding so that people just appreciate the differences that exist between us and the commonalities, And we just passed the Persian New Year, actually, which is the rebirth of nature, celebrating spring, and just connecting with family and loved ones. So it was really a fun day to build that bridge.
So as a therapist, I know that, often we address the mental health concerns, primarily things like depression, anxiety, and those kind of concerns that a client would, contact a therapist to address. How then because we did discuss briefly about how maybe acculturation or assimilation, or the process of assimilation, especially for some cultures in this environment, the current environment, how would that then maybe cause or heighten or increase some anxiety with some of your clients?
Absolutely. Well, I think heightened anxiety is a current state for a lot of people. And this is just, I just came from Washington, D.C., actually, the Networker Symposium, a wonderful conference where the conference's name or title was The Courage to Connect. And I think that it was put together particularly because so many people are experiencing that lack of connection, that disconnect in our society is higher than it's ever been. Perhaps similar to right after 9/11, I think there's that similarity. And I think, I find myself empathizing and truly experiencing some of those similar things as an immigrant that I think a lot of our clients are experiencing, which is fear, anxiety, of the unknown. What will happen? How are their families and loved ones are going to be affected? Are people going to look at them differently? Is there, this ultimate disconnect that brings so much, hate and, unfortunately,
Division.
Thank you. Division in our society, which is what we want as psychotherapists, as those who want to help people, we want to avoid and we want to fight against.
Sure. Okay. So with the recent or the current climate and some of the stressors, the compounded stressors that's been added because of some of maybe the travel bans and things like that have occurred, are you seeing more clients that have that? And it's great what you said about being able to identify from an authentic place, because
Absolutely.
I know personally how much more effective a therapist is, even though we're trained to be empathetic and all that. But when it actually connects with a real place of experience with you, then that increases the effectiveness, because what's true reaches a place that's true. So you're actually able to be key in addressing some of the associated anxiety, which is why we definitely want you to be visible, to be out here so that people know that a therapist like you exists. But just so we can relate to, because a lot of it, like you said, people just don't know or understand or haven't learned about a lot of things about how certain cultures are affected or viewed with, the hate or the division or the discrimination, and how that is misinterpreted often. And, as an African-American woman, obviously I can relate to some of it, but here recently, I know a lot of it is targeted towards certain cultures, right? So with the person then experiencing this, how does a therapist, first of all, address it in a family context, for example, and then maybe in an individual context, and how far does your reach go with trying to help these people, because they do need to continue to exist in this country, and deal with the repercussions of whatever the political climate is causing to occur. So how are you addressing all aspects of what's occurring?
I think it's a very important question. I'm glad you're asking it. It's significant when we look at how what's happening in our world, regardless of where we are, impacts the family. I think that even after the election, I think plenty of family members have experienced disconnect from one another, depending on which side they were on, and which is, the most important thing, I think, is to actively try to build bridges, because most of the time, it's similar things we all want. It's those, it's just so interesting. I think there was, at the conference, I spoke with someone, actually, I cannot remember which context this came from. I apologize to the person but they I think took people from both sides into a retreat, and they had like a 2-day weekend where two sides of opposition were together for a whole weekend and try to understand what makes them so different, and why are they so disconnected. I wish that this particular exercise, by the way, was done with people of all different cultures and identities, particularly if people could, recognize what their fears are, whether what particular things are they creating, that's this type of stigmas or generalizations that separates us, and then they were able to truly get together with that opposite group and really have an interview and to find out, are we really that different? Are things that I think about you truly accurate? Or how many things have I just made assumptions about based on fear? Based on just the lack of knowledge. And recently, I've recognized just so many times, I'm recognizing how these misunderstandings or these disconnects are actually because of misunderstandings, because of lack of knowledge, because of not knowing. And so I'm always inviting or welcoming my clients to find their voice, whichever part of the world they're from, to be in touch with their identity first, before they can actually present that to others, and to actively shed some light. I just recently, I was so happy that I took my cross-cultural, group of friends to this cultural event that I was invited to for the Persian New Year, because I wanted people from different cultures to be invited to my cultural event to see for themselves what kind of people, for example, Iranian Americans are. And an amazing comedian, Maz Jobrani, actually talks about breaking the stereotype
Yeah.
through humor,
Mhm.
like being able to bring comedy into our experiences, because there's so much about that experiences that we possess and we hold, we have, that are so much similar to the other, despite the ethnicity or cultural background.
Okay.
You know, and an amazing author actually who wrote a book called Funny in Farsi also used humor to build bridges, and truly show the life of an immigrant. You know, particularly first generation and second generation, so lots of immigrant families, you know, the parents are the original, you know, immigrants perhaps, and then the children who are the second generation have a complete different experience, yet,
Yes.
you know, they go through quite a bit of stress acclimating and trying to help the parents adjust and be the bridge between the culture and the public culture and the family of origins, ethnicity, and cultural background.
So, and that's very important. And you mentioned several things. I was trying to
Absolutely.
remember points as you're, but then you'd say something else. Like, oh, that's good too. So, but one thing that you said when you talked about helping them to understand the other perspective,
Yes.
I think is very important, because if they're only looking at themselves as what's happening to me and how I'm feeling because of the racial bias or
Absolutely.
because of the misunderstanding or misinterpretation of my culture, if they're only looking at it from that perspective, then they will feel more victimized than empowered. Whereas I hear you're saying, well, you know, understand that this is an opportunity, a teaching opportunity
Absolutely.
to them, because they're lacking in knowledge
Yeah.
also. So that's a great point. The other thing I wanted to address, though, would be the stigmas that's associated, because how difficult is it? I know if you go to, say, the International Counseling Institute, that they're already people that are prepared to engage
Right.
in this process. But for those people that may be affected by some of the current events that are happening, that may be going through some of the struggle and some of the disappointment, maybe even depression from the disconnect or the fear of not being able to gain their family members or lose family members or whatever the backlash is from the recent events. If they're then not, I guess, as open to this process, what would you suggest a person could do, maybe another family member, a friend of this person who's experiencing this, that may have stigmas associated with this process that says, well, I'm not really crazy or incompetent or not able to handle my own situation, but then they may be suffering yet, but not understanding that this intervention could possibly address some of their concerns and alleviate some of the distress they're having.
Of course, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're talking about the disconnect that happens when you know this is getting home to you,
Yes.
for you, and this is similar, but you're trying to disassociate with that because you don't want to experience the struggle or the humiliation that comes with reaching
actually
out or
seeking counseling
help.
or therapy. And how would you, because a cause of, I know with my community, with African American community, oftentimes that it is interpreted as being weak or crazy or, you know, having a mental problem and all the other, you know, derogatory terminologies that's associated with it.
Absolutely.
But how would you then maybe address, in case there was stigmas associated with it, to maybe address certain cultures to help them be a little bit more open to the process?
Absolutely. I think that I really want to emphasize Dr. Brené Brown's work,
Okay,
because
sure.
she's, you know, I don't know if anyone's watched the TED Talk by her, The Power of Vulnerability is profound. It really is. You know, she was a keynote speaker at the conference that I just came from DC, and she's amazing. And The Gift of Imperfections, Rising Strong, these are just a few of her book titles. But I think the message that she's giving, that I'm going to give right now as well, is that there is no vulnerability, you know, that's shameful in being human. This is all a human experience for all of us. You know, to this day in my clinical practice, I pull out a chart with all the variety of emotions and the faces. And I don't care if my client is 10 years old or, you know, 80 years old. I show the chart because I think that all of us need to be reminded of just how, or what it looks like, how it feels to be human. I think sometimes we forget and we make generalizations about what being human is supposed to be. We're supposed to be, resilient 100% of the time. We're supposed to be strong.
Yes.
It's shameful to have a sad story. Recently I choked up in a meeting where I'm supposed to be totally professional and put together, but it was during the week of the ban, the immigration ban, and I had received about 5 or 6 phone calls from different people who I knew who were affected. And I just remember choking up and not finding my voice. In that moment, I was feeling like someone without a voice. Someone who didn't know how to paint a picture and build a bridge to someone else who has no idea, potentially, about the struggles or the pain that this may be causing immigrants. But in that moment, I had to get in touch with my vulnerability and to own it. And that's the message I want to tell our clients who, the stigma that they might be experiencing, the fear of, I better not say something because it might appear as if something's wrong with me. Yes. I need to just shake this off and be strong and not appear to be weak or not appear to be vulnerable or not to appear to be afraid. All these things happen to all of us, and human beings, we experience it. My most favorite book of all times is by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and it truly... yes. I think it's a must for psychotherapists, right?
It should be.
It's a must in grad school.
Be.
But if you walk through someone's journey of struggle and fear and you from the deep core of your being as a human being, you can sense what that's like, and you can empathize and you can recognize, and this is what bonds us, this is what connects us. And so I encourage all those people who are afraid to speak up because of a stigma to be empowered to know that their voice matters, their experience matters.
Absolutely.
And the more they actually speak up, the more they're going to connect our universe that is currently so deeply disconnected, so deeply, absolutely in state of stress and anxiety, and so I'm encouraging all people to own their experiences. They're not crazy. Experiencing what they're experiencing, their pain, their emotional journey is absolutely validated.
What a wonderful connection to connect it with Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Anyone that knows me that's been in my session probably recognizes that I often incorporate those principles in my therapy and the way I reach people. That is an awesome lesson to understand that not only should you reach out for help, but you are accountable to add your experience to the overall experience of human beings, because that is part of being human. I love how that's why I asked you. I knew you would have a perfect answer for that. But you're great. You're awesome.
No, when you're passionate about something, you just let it shine. I love what you say about finding your gift and just give it. Yes. I think we're all passionate about things, and I'm definitely passionate about multicultural awareness and cross-cultural understanding. And I have to just add this little piece because I had the honor of meeting Salvador Minuchin at the Psychotherapy Network here in Washington, D.C. as he received his Lifetime Achievement Award. I was at the banquet, and I had the opportunity to have a moment asking him questions such as, I think that question I asked him was, as an Iranian American therapist who's passionate about multiculturalism and cross-cultural understanding, and who's experienced being an immigrant, and he's an immigrant, he's from Argentina, and he was, an immigrant from Argentina, and he's one of the grandfathers of, family therapy, because he's, was a psychiatrist who was emphasizing the importance of family work. But anyway, I asked him what is the message he can give me regarding how to be effective with my message and with the multicultural awareness endeavor and cross-cultural understanding. And the one thing he said with his Argentinian accent was, Sarah, I tell you one thing, don't do it alone. That message was so profound, because it's together that we stand, and that collectivistic,
yes.
I understand that because those are it was within my roots. That collectivism is so important because we are all together, and that's what makes us strong. Having a sense of community, connecting with people with similar voice, being empowered to speak, not to get silenced, not to feel silenced. Don't allow your response to trauma and being triggered with trauma, or the despair that comes with events that impact you, the anxiety that rises because of issues that don't consider you or your rights or your family's rights. Don't let those things silence you. We must find our voices, and I'm so grateful that you're inviting me to have my voice, because that's also very therapeutic for me. So
absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Oh my goodness, there's so many wonderful things that you shared, and I'm sure this is going to be helpful for many people. But before we close this segment, I want to make sure that I ask some specific information about how a person can reach you.
Of course.
I'd like you to share with yourself. Yeah, I have your card here.
Yeah.
And we will add that on the end screen.
Sure.
However,
Sure.
yes. We'll probably broadcast this with 2 platforms. So I'd like you to share how they will be able to get in touch with you.
So I am on the therapy directory of Psychology Today and Psychotherapy St. Louis, as well as you can probably best ways to just directly contact me on the phone numbers that you're going to provide.
Yes.
And the email address. That's probably the best way to connect.
Okay, and your number that you have listed here is the 594-7322.
And there's a California number, because I'm licensed. I'm actually a licensed practicing counselor in the state of Missouri, as well as a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. So actually, I do provide services to Californians.
Great.
Awesome. And I do Skype therapy or phone consultation with Californian community.
Okay, and the California number is area code 530-302-7322. And your office is located at 7750 Clayton Road, Suite 210. That's Clayton, Missouri, 63117. Okay, so it's been wonderful having you, and I love what you shared at the end, because it's so consistent with what I'm about to say about not doing it alone. And you know how I always end the segments is by saying, this is Carolyn Catchings reminding you to not take your path of mental health wellness alone. Ask a therapist.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Pleasure.
Are you going to